So we finally come to the end of the first round of Tenkaichi. There's been many great fights and surprisingly only really one jobber fight. So that's pretty amazing. And this video will be to for me just to predict what I think they'll do, like the fighters will do to get stronger and who I think will win the matches and how I think they'll play. The first fighter is Musashi. I don't know if he'd be the type of person to study the gates, but I do think that he would continue studying the two sword style to try to get better at it. And depending on if Kojiro like assassinates all the revolutionaries, then I think there's a possibility that they have like a match at the end of the 6 months. Or maybe they train for a while together. I don't know. Something like that. Now onto Fuma, and the most obvious thing would be to say that like she develops some kind of new poison that makes her even stronger, but that feel pretty repetitive. So I think something that would make more sense is that maybe like she uses the poison on her weapon to try to poison Musashi. And she also mentioned learning from Toda in the recent chapter, so maybe she learned from him more, and that's like she learns to see the world with her ears, or you know, with her hearing. Now onto Yagyu, he could possibly study more of the gates, unlocking the second one maybe, or he could further his pursuit of the sword. I don't really know what Yagyu could do more of, but there was the mental image training that he did, so maybe that like he repeatedly thinks of what Choco did in his fight to try to defeat him. Other than that, I can't really think of anything for him. Now, onto Choco himself, you know, he was using those like vacuum blades during his fight with Kami, so maybe when he becomes a swordsman, he creates those just with the sword instead of his body. And then, of course, there's also the furthering of the gates, which is something he could do. Since he also decided to become a swordsman, I think it's possible that he decides to wear armor into his next fight, which would look kind of insane having someone as giant of him in armor, but it would also look pretty cool. Now onto Hanzo, and people have been discussing this, and the common consensus seems to be that he will begin a prosthetic. Of course, we don't know for sure, but it seems likely. And if he does get a prosthetic, then it would probably have some type of trick in it. One thing would be maybe like Guts's arm cannon, or maybe there's like a grappling hook that he could use to take Yasuke's shield or like get to a better position in the air. Or here's another thing that we haven't seen, a gun. There could be like a gun hidden in the prosthetic, kind of like the arm cannon, maybe like a Gatling gun. And so he shoots a bunch, and then Yasuke would have to block it. I don't know. Or it could be that, assuming he does have a prosthetic, that he could have a bunch of different things stuffed inside of it, all at different moments. He could also maybe have like a hidden blade, kind of like in Assassin's Creed. There's a lot of different things they could do for him depending on what they decide to do for him. And I'm really excited to see what they do choose in the end. And now onto Yasuke. I actually have a few ideas that I think are pretty interesting for Yasuke. The most notable one being, like, in Hanzo's fight, he hid pieces of the Tanbo Kiri under his clothes as protection. So let's say in Yasuke's fight, maybe he does the same with Hanzo as a way to, like, trick him back. And as you can see, he didn't really wear much stuff on his, like, chest, torso area. So maybe this time he comes in with a shirt or whatever, a tunic, and then underneath it is some type of armor or something, shield, and it throws Hanzo off. And so that could be an interesting moment where he tricks Hanzo or something. Also, there's during his fight with Togo, it was like shown that he was using like rotational force to help in his attacks and blocking and stuff. So I don't know how exactly, but he could use that, especially if he unlocks the second gate, which would probably really help that. So yeah, I think that Yasuke could potentially be really interesting next round. Next up is Jinsuke, and for him, I think it's possible that he does something similar to what Yagyu did when he was confined. Maybe Jinsuke like keeps on thinking of what Ito did during the fight, so he comes up with different moves that Ito might make and how he could block or redirect those moves. Of course, Yagyu already does that, so it might seem kind of repetitive, but at the same time, it has been shown that like the fighters learn from each other. So yeah, I think that makes sense. There's also the very slight possibility that he trains with Inshin. Uh, I'm not really sure what the likelihood of that would be, but it is a possibility. Another thing I was thinking of is Jinsuke probably has the best like knowledge of the human body, so potentially he could learn anatomical anatomy with some breathing because as we saw, anatomical anatomy was like moving around your body parts and stuff, and with someone as knowledgeable as the human body as Jinsuke, I don't know, it just makes sense. The only thing you'd have to train would be his breath work, I guess. I don't know. I think it's a possibility, and it could potentially throw Ito off. Speaking of Ito, his training will probably just be alcoholism and womanizing. Okay, in all honesty, I don't know what he would do. Maybe something similar to what I was talking about with Yagyu, of thinking of what the other fighters might do. I don't know. We know, or we've seen that like he seemingly learned a lot from watching them, so potentially he trains those new moves, but again, I just don't know. He's, at least to me, the most unpredictable fighter, so I guess we'll just see. Anyways, with that all wrapped up, it's time to move on to how I think the matches will play out. First up, we got Musashi versus Fuma, which I think that she, will use the poison on him, like I said earlier, but due to his unnatural talent, he's just able to stay alive. It could also be because of the first gate supposedly allows you to like totally control your body, and the poison, like, it makes blood flow out of your body, so maybe he uses it to, or uses the first gate to keep the blood in his body. Anyways, he'll use it to either like, he'll just resist it, or he'll use it to become stronger, and then he'll blind her, which will lead to her doing that thing I was talking about earlier, where she relies on her hearing instead, just like Toda. But she's not that good at it yet, and so over time she gets better and better as the fight goes on, as Musashi is also using the poison to make himself stronger. And then ultimately, Fuma would use the poison on herself to become stronger, but then she would end up bleeding out faster and Musashi would win, because I just don't see him losing the second round. I hope that he doesn't win the whole tournament, but I do think that he'll probably win at least this round. He just seems to have main character energy, which I know is like a bad reason, but I mean, you can't deny it. Now onto the next match, which is kind of the same thing. Of the one character just seems to be narratively more important, which I'd say is Yagyu. Yagyu won his fight in just 3 chapters, basically making Adams a jobber, so I think he's not going to beat Choco that easily, of course, but I think that he'll probably still win because it seems like he has more importance narratively. Even though the authors say that they like vote to see who will win each match, I think that at the very least for the third fight, that was not the case. Even if Adams was just really weak compared to Yagyu, they could have just given him a more powerful ability. They're the writers, so I think that Yagyu will have more importance and therefore will win. As for how he will win, I don't know, but he'll probably unlock some further evolution of the gates or of his techniques or something. I don't know, but I just don't see him losing here. Now, for Hanzo versus Yasuke, I think it'll start out with them walking out, as they do, and then everyone sees Hanzo as an arm, and it's covered in clothes, so they don't see that it's a prosthetic, and they're like, what? Does he have a new arm? It's so realistic, because it would be presumably better than most other prosthetics. But then as time goes on, it's just revealed that, well, it is better than other prosthetics, because he has the backing of 2 sponsors, so that could get a really good one. I think that for most of the fight, Yasuke will be dominating because, he's physically just stronger. Similar to Hanzo's fight with Sasaki, or Kojiro. I don't know why I called him Sasaki, but it'll be similar to that, and Hanzo will possibly be, doing tricks to build up to something, just like with what he did to Kojiro. But will it work? I don't know. It's also possible that he unlocks the first gate here, as when Ito-sai was talking about how most people had unlocked the gate, it didn't show Hanzo. So if he does unlock the gate during this fight, then that would be a good boost for him, and it could help throw Yasuke off. Or he could unlock it during the time skip, and then, fight part of the fight without it, and then suddenly he uses it to throw Yasuke off. Either way, I don't really know. I don't really see him unlocking the gate personally, but that's another possibility. Although the second gate would be better for him, but of course you can't, or at least you presumably can't skip gates, and that's if he even gets through any gates in the first place. Anyways, if he does do that trick with the gate, it could potentially lead to him winning the match, but ultimately I think Yasuke will probably win. I personally like Hanzo better, but I think Yasuke just has more reason. Plus it's the similar thing with Yagyu, more narrative. Also, another reason why I think Hanzo won't win here, or at the very least, he won't win the tournament, is because, at the start of, or the end of the first match, Honda lost, and it mentioned how the reign of Tokugawa, which happened in real life, wouldn't happen in the story. Now, of course, there's the whole thing about the authors choosing the characters winning just like a chapter or two beforehand. So, yeah, that could change, but I don't know. I still think that after you put that in the manga, it's going to be really weird to have Tokugawa win. So, I just don't think that Hanzo will win, even though I like him better. So, Yasuke will win this one. Jinsuke versus Ito-sai, the one everybody probably wants to see the most. The old man versus old man battle. I think Jinsuke will start out strong, taking the edge over Ito-sai, and it might even shock Ito-sai a bit, like how good he is, but it's Ito-sai, so he'll begin to adapt and show just how good he is. But it'll be revealed that Jinsuke's seen these moves in his training of trying to think of every single thing that Ito-sai could pull out. And then he's going to start going even further than that. Like a chess game, he's going to be playing out moves like he's Magnus Carlsen, or in fighting manga terms, like the Record of Ragnarok version of Sasaki Kojiro. And I think that he's basically seeing all his moves, and so he'll know how to properly defend against them. And so naturally he'll open the second gate, which is all about using your opponent's weight and stuff against them. And of course, since he could maybe learn anatomical anatomy, maybe he does, and that allows him to make his domain of death thing bigger. He makes his arms reach out farther so he can strike Ito-sai easier. But this is Ito-sai, and I feel like he might stick around longer. Even though, again, I like Jinsuke way more than him, I just don't know if I see Jinsuke winning this. I hope that he does, but I don't know. Ito-sai, low-key, feels like an author's pet. He'll probably win it, in my opinion. So, those are pretty much my predictions for the second round. I'm not too hopeful for Hanzo and Jinsuke, unfortunately, but there is still a chance that they can win, especially Hanzo. Jinsuke, I feel, has less of a chance, because again, Ito-sai seems like he's more important to the story, just like Yagyu. But it remains to be seen. Plus, if the authors truly are just going to choose whoever has the best ability or whatever, then theoretically he can win. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And that is all. If you like this video, why not subscribe and stick around? I'll be making more like it. And I think I already have one or two videos kind of like it. So yeah, If you do stay around, I'll see you then.